Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Today, I'm honored to have a special person, the unconventional journalist, Sam Oser. As you guys know, I am very specific about having independent journalism taking over the sphere in this country. As we know, corporate journalism simply doesn't cover the things that need to be covered. Why? Because it's not in their interest. But anyway, with us, again, Sam Oser, welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Egberto.
Well, look, let me tell you. When I heard from you and heard that you were embarking on a new project with regards to empowering the community or letting the community know that they are empowered to do what I kind of refer to as citizens journalism. Why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the plans that you, along with other organizations, are talking about?
Right, for sure. Thanks again for having me on. So I've been doing journalism now as my activism for about 6, 7 years. And it's getting to the point where I've realized like it's time to teach people how to report in their own communities. And the reason being is because, the news is not reflecting what community wants or needs to see. And people in their own community, they know when their streets flood. They know when they're working or trying to deal with Houston City Council to bring attention to the flooding. They know what's going on. So this effort, it's a workshop, and I'll be doing it with the Climate Justice Museum at the Post. And this workshop is just to help people tell their own stories. Like, we have everything we need to tell our own stories. We have so many free tools. Like you and I, we engage in a lot of digital things online, and it's accessible to everybody. So people in their own community should really start stepping up and reporting on what's happening in their communities, I think.
Now, Sam, one of the reasons you sent me a narrative here, some points that I'd like you to articulate on. Why is it that individual citizens now have to do this? There are reasons. What are the reasons?
Yeah, so reason number one is news deserts and news layoffs. So in January 2024 alone, there were over 500 layoffs in the journalism industry. There are currently, what did I say? It was like 65,000 journalists in the nation. And that sounds like a lot, but that's one journalist for every 5,000 people. Um, and so that's, one person for a city, basically. And the news deserts are becoming more and more of a thing as news layoffs happen. I encourage anybody listening, please Google news deserts, and you will see that a lot of the South, the southern part of the US, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, parts of Texas, Mississippi, it's a news desert. There's a news desert an hour away from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the capital of our country. And about an hour or so away from the capital, there's a county that does not have adequate access to news. So these are some of the disparities that we're seeing. And people who are journalists, they're going to go where there are jobs. They're going to go to where there is money, right? So a person went to school, they studied journalism, they need to put a roof over their head, they need to put food on their plate. If they want to be in the journalism, where are they going to go? They're going to go to states that have news publications that can pay their mortgage, their rent, pay for food. They're not going to go to the South where there aren't a lot of news opportunities. So that's one reason.
You know
Um,
what is interesting before you finish there, Sam?
yeah.
Because as you know, I put everything through a politics frame or prism, if you will. And when you said that, all I could think about, you just named Mississippi, Alabama, parts of Texas, right an hour outside of Washington, D.C. And all I could think of is that those are the people nobody listens to or anybody knows about. And
Exactly.
henceforth, it creates a vacuum where political interests can go into and mislead these people into doing things that vote against their own interests. So as you were telling me about this, uh, these news deserts, I just pulled up the map from your link tree, and folks, everybody should visit linktree.ee/unconventional journalist. That is Sam's link tree. Linktr.ee at, all right, let's back up. It's linktr.ee/unconventional journalist. And put that into your thing if you get a chance. She does a whole lot of good work. And I ran across this article at her link tree, which comes from the Hussman School of Journalism and Media from the University of North Carolina, that shows these news deserts. And you know, when you said that, Sam, a bell just went off. Oh my God, that is why so much of our population is actually so ill-informed.
Right.
Because again, who fills that vacuum? And you are telling people, or I think what you're saying, and tell me if I'm correct, your workshop will actually help citizens fill that gap that otherwise would go filled with who knows what.
Exactly. No, that's exactly it. And what's really interesting about the news desert map, so in the workshop too, I have a news desert map with a food desert
Mhm.
map and also a gerrymandering map. So the states and the counties and the people that are experiencing lack of food access and active gerrymandering are the same people who don't have quality access to news. Isn't
Wow,
that crazy?
it's what a correlation, right?
Yeah, if you overlay these maps on top of each other, you see that like they are actively experiencing the brunt of systemic oppression, and there's nobody there to report on it.
There you go. And that's why so many can be fooled into believe some of these oppressions aren't in fact systemic.
Exactly.
You know, so tell me a little bit more about what you intend to do. First of all, tell us how people can find out about going to this workshop to make themselves good citizen journalists.
For sure. So I haven't posted on my social media yet, but if you follow me at Sam the Mullet, I will post the little graphic. It'll be at the Post in July. I have two workshops coming up for sure. My goal is to make it monthly to try to
Mhm,
make it as accessible as possible. But for now, it's July 14th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Post in
mhm.
downtown Houston. And then the second one is August 11th, also from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So that's July 14th and August 11th.
And you'll have all of that on your Twitter at Sam the Mullet, right?
Yes, at Sam the Mullet. Yes.
Yeah, because I think let me tell you, hearing about this excites me because I constantly talk about us having to take care of ourselves. We're the ones who are going to have to save ourselves. We can't expect these corporations who own these entities to come out there and fill the void. And what you're doing, I think, is invaluable to ensure that people know that they, first of all, they have agency in this and that they can make a difference. So why don't you talk to them, let them know
Yeah.
what needs to be
Well,
done.
and like the thing is too, is, we live in Houston, Harris County. I'm not sure where your audience is, but I'm sure it's around here. And I'm sure some of y'all may be thinking like, well, we have the Houston Chronicle, we have Houston Public Media, we just now got Houston Landing. We have community impact, we have all these various sources. But when you look at the news that's given to you, does it truly reflect what you're experiencing? First of all, I want you to ask yourself that. And then secondly, a lot of these news entities, KPRC, KHOU as well, they are driven by profit, not driven by community or community representation. Even though the Houston Landing is technically a nonprofit, they still have a board of very, very rich people.
Mhm.
And they have to answer to how much money is coming in. And so this continuous putting profit over people, and we see this many times in our prison systems, in our healthcare, in our education, HISD state takeover, but we see it in our media as well. And so that's part of why it's important to report about what's happening in your community. And it can be real simple. I've been talking to some people about this because it's been I'm on 2 years of like, okay, I'm going to do this workshop, finally launching it. I've been thinking and talking about it for 2 years and getting feedback from people. And one of the main things that kind of puts people at a pause is they're like, I'm not articulate, I'm not educated, I'm not a journalist. And the thing I have to say to that, and this is part of the workshop that I give, is that Western media as we know it was created by a bunch of white guys in the 1920s. I'm serious. There's this book called the Untold Story of Objectivity. It's by Lewis Raven Wallace. Lewis Raven Wallace was a corporate journalist, and he quit. And he's now part of Press On, which is a Southern journalism movement, journalism in service of liberation. He's now part of that group, and he does journalism in service of liberation now. No, it's called Undoing the Myth of Objectivity. And in his book, he researches, where did objectivity even come from? And prior to the 1900s, news was given out by different political parties. So you had socialists, they had their newspaper, the capitalists had their newspaper, the communists had their newspaper. All these different political groups had their newspaper. When we get into the 1920s and 30s, what happens? The Great Depression. People are trying to get money. So news went away from all these partisan news outlets to something being more centralized and in favor of advertising. That's when advertising models were introduced into the news media, because they were like, well, it's the Great Depression. I need to make money. So how can I make money based off the news? And they started putting ads more heavily in their papers than they did in the past. And neutrality came about because they were trying to be neutral as to not piss off their advertisers. And the thing is too, like, these white guys who created this form of journalism in the 1920s and 30s, we have to keep in mind that they were probably racist, probably transphobic, homophobic. If they were stewards of newspapers in the South, they were probably in the Klan, to be honest. And so this is what kind of seeded our current form of Western media. And again, Lewis Raven Wallace, Undoing the Myth of Objectivity, he did a bunch of research and he writes it all down about the history and where we are now. And so if you feel like you're not articulate, you feel like you don't have the journalism chops, whatever, please just be reminded that Western media as we know it was created like 100 or so years ago, and it does not accommodate the current needs of our communities because it was never made for us.
I think that is so essential what you just said with respect to, and even the title of the book is insightful, objectivity. What is in fact objectivity? Because when you talk about certain neighborhoods and whatever rags we have in Houston or elsewhere, how much of the community do they really cover? How often do they go to the civic clubs, or how often are they on the streets of these communities, or simply dependent on what their view is of community instead of what community view is of that community? So who's better to tell that story than those who partake of it? And if you have a workshop that is able to tell folks how to bring their reality, and I think that's why social media has taken off so well, because
Yeah.
it gives us the ability to see how just about everybody who has the chops to just go out there and say, I'm willing to put my life out there. I'm willing to put our activity out there, an activity that wouldn't have gotten covered before. I tell you, Sam, I get so many stories off of TikTok or
Yeah.
Instagram, and I put it out there. I've contacted so many lawyers and some rappers, different folks up just going through my TikTok and I said, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Let me contact this person and learn more about it and put that on, write an article about it. Sometimes put it on the radio, sometimes put it on video. I mean, it's just, I think this is needed. And I think giving folks that structure, giving folks that ability to learn some of your journalistic skills and how to apply that to their yeoman's, whatever it is that they're doing, I think that is where we need to go, because we can see right now that corporate journalism just ain't going to cut it.
Yeah, and the thing is too, is like journalists, they're going to go where their job is. They're going to go where their money is. So if you have a journalist coming into Houston and they're from up north because they couldn't find a job up there in journalism and they found a job at the Houston Chronicle, where are they going to live? Most of the journalists I know that have moved from out of state live in the most gentrified areas of Houston.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
They're not in touch with the day-to-day of the community because they're truly not part of it. And it's not their fault, right? Like a lot of people come in with good intentions and they're trying, but sometimes if you're moving too fast, how can you be boots on the ground in a community you're not even part of?
Exactly.
So like there's that layer of it. And oh, there was another part. But that was like the main thing I wanted to say, because like you're in your community, you know what's there. And we have all these different tools. And oh yes, I wanted to say, like, also my workshop, like it does cover some basic elements of journalism, right? You can report on your community, but you can't say things that are false.
Right.
Right. Make sure you fact check yourself. It's like when you're arguing with your spouse or arguing with whoever, you want to make sure your facts are straight. And that goes for journalism in general, whether or not it's citizen journalism or whatever. So even though Western journalism as we know it was created in the 1900s out of the Great Depression, fact checking is still valid.
Right.
So I'm not saying like throw everything out the door, just throw your insecurities about not measuring up out the door.
Right. Well, look, let me tell you, Sam, give me a closer. Let give our audience, first of all, tell us a little bit more about your workshop. How can they get in touch with you? And give me a good closer.
So the workshop I've been doing on and off for about a year or so. And I finally have come to a head with it. And the Climate Justice Museum has agreed to let me do this workshop in their space. They currently have their space at the Post in downtown Houston. The Post is the new fancy post office with all the restaurants. And so in tandem with the Climate Justice Museum, I'm going to be putting on this workshop in this space. Right now, it's all physical. I'm not having any online ones because I'm really just trying to tap into who's here, who's around me. But if it is something of interest for it to be online, if you message me at Sam the Mullet, whenever you follow me, if I gauge that there's enough interest for online workshops, we can definitely go that route. But for now, the 2 workshops I have planned is July 14th from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Post, and August from 2 to 4 p.m. also at the Post in the Climate Justice Museum space. And we're going to be covering a couple of things. We're going to be covering what is community journalism, why is it important, the basics of journalism, and then at the end, we're going to brainstorm story ideas so that way you can leave with ideas on what to write on going forward.
You have been listening to the unconventional journalist, Sam Oser. Sam, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. This is definitely something that we need.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.